Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we're going to unpack something that has fascinated people for centuries, but let's be real, is almost always totally misunderstood. We are talking about the organizational structure of Freemasonry. Now you hear all sorts of wild stuff, right? Secret handshakes, shadowy global networks pulling the strings, but the actual reality of how this historic fraternity is built is incredibly practical and honestly fascinating in its own right. So let's just dive right into it. Think of today's explainer as looking at a builder's blueprint. We're going to completely demystify how Freemasonry is structured by looking at the actual nuts and bolts of its organization. By the end of this, you are going to see exactly how millions of members across the globe manage to stay connected.
So here is our blueprint for today. 1. The foundation, the Blue Lodge. 2. The framework, leading the local lodge. 3. The governing roof, Grand Lodges. And 4. Structural extensions, appendant bodies. Let's start laying those bricks.
Section 1. The foundation, the Blue Lodge.
Okay, so every great building needs a rock-solid foundation, right? Well, in Freemasonry, that foundation is the Blue Lodge. You might also hear it called the Craft Lodge or Symbolic Lodge. But whatever you call it, this is the essential starting point. It's the absolute core of all Freemasonry. No matter who you are, every single member begins their journey right here, progressing through 3 foundational degrees. And you can basically think of these as stages of personal growth and education. Step 1 is the entered apprentice. This symbolizes a sort of moral awakening. Really, it's a birth into Masonic life, where your pursuit of knowledge kicks off. Next up is Step 2, the fellowcraft. Now this stage shifts the focus entirely to intellectual development. It's all about learning and expanding your understanding of the liberal arts and sciences. And finally, Step 3 is the Master Mason. This represents maturity, responsibility, and the triumph of virtue. When a man reaches this third step, he is considered a full, complete Freemason.
Now, I really want to emphasize an absolutely crucial point here. There is literally no rank higher than Master Mason. This completely busts one of the biggest misconceptions out there. I mean, you always hear pop culture dropping references to a 33rd degree Mason, and it's super easy to assume that person is somehow the boss of a Master Mason, right? Well, that is simply not true in the core structure of the craft. Sure, additional organizations might offer further teachings, but they absolutely do not outrank or supersede the foundational status of the Master Mason. That's a huge takeaway.
Section 2. The framework, leading the local lodge.
So, the local lodge is where Freemasonry is actually experienced on a personal, day-to-day level. It's where these guys gather regularly to study, perform ceremonies, organize charity work, and just build strong fraternal bonds. But you know, a lodge can't exactly run itself. Leading that experience is a role that, frankly, causes some massive linguistic misunderstandings today. I'm talking about the worshipful master. Now, hearing that title out of context, it is so easy to think it implies some sort of religious cult or deity worship. But actually, scratch that. Worshipful is simply an Old English term. It just means honored or respected. Think of it exactly like a British judge being called your worship, or a respected local mayor. The worshipful master is just an elected, respected leader who presides over the lodge's meetings and ceremonies. He's absolutely not a religious figure.
Of course, the worshipful master isn't running the whole show by himself. He is supported by a full team of officers. You've got the senior and junior wardens, who are essentially his vice presidents, helping manage the lodge. You have a treasurer handling the finances, a secretary for the records, deacons who act as messengers during the ceremonies, and stewards who help organize activities. Oh, and then there's the Tyler. The Tyler's job is to guard the entrance to the lodge to make sure meetings remain private and secure. And the coolest part? Historically, and even often still today, he actually sits outside the door holding a drawn sword. It's such a fascinating, memorable tradition. But really, it's this specific framework of officers working together in harmony that keeps the local lodge running smoothly.
Section 3. The governing roof, Grand Lodges, and global recognition.
Okay, so we've got our foundation and our framework. Let's look at the roof. To really understand this, we have to ask a big, dramatic question, one that has fueled countless conspiracy theories over the years. Are you ready? Who controls all the Freemasons globally? Like, who is the puppet master sitting at the very top of this worldwide pyramid, dictating orders from some hidden global headquarters? The answer? Nobody. Literally no one. Take a second to let that sink in. There is absolutely no worldwide Masonic president. There is no singular global headquarters. Freemasonry is completely, fundamentally decentralized. So instead of some global boss calling the shots, Freemasonry relies on the Grand Lodge system. A Grand Lodge is a sovereign and completely independent governing authority for a specific jurisdiction. Usually we're talking about a state or a country.
So, for example, you have the United Grand Lodge of England, the Grand Lodge of California, the Grand Lodge of Texas. And here's the kicker. They are completely independent of one another. They are led by a Grand Master, who acts a lot like a chief executive for that specific geographic area. Every single Grand Lodge writes its own rules, its own constitutions, and its own membership standards. Honestly, this brilliant decentralized model is exactly what has allowed the craft to flourish globally. It maintains consistency while completely adapting to and respecting local customs rather than trying to force some clunky, one-size-fits-all global mandate.
But you might be wondering, if everyone is totally independent, how on earth does it stay united? Well, the magic word here is recognition. Recognition is what allows members to visit lodges across jurisdictions and participate in Masonic activities internationally. Because there's no global boss, Grand Lodges use historic recognition agreements. You can think of them a lot like diplomatic treaties between sovereign nations. So if the Grand Lodge of Texas and the Grand Lodge of Scotland have similar standards and traditions, they officially recognize each other. It's a really elegant system that prevents the global brotherhood from splintering apart. It ensures international consistency while keeping absolute local independence.
However, because each Grand Lodge sets its own rules, their standards for recognizing other Grand Lodges can actually differ, and this creates some really distinct international flavors. On one side, you have the Anglo-American tradition. This is super common in the US, the UK, and Canada, and it strictly requires a belief in a supreme being and uses very traditional rituals. Now, contrast that with the continental tradition, which you'll find more in parts of Europe and Latin America. They often have much more flexible religious requirements and focus heavily on philosophical or social themes. Because their core rules differ so much, Grand Lodges from these two traditions often do not officially recognize one another.
Section 4. Structural Extensions. Appendant Bodies.
All right, we've built the foundation, the framework, and the roof. Now let's check out the optional add-ons. Once a man becomes a Master Mason in the Blue Lodge, he can choose to join these structural extensions to kind of expand his Masonic journey. The Scottish Rite offers a massive deep dive into philosophy and ethics through 29 additional degrees. The York Rite explores early Masonic and chivalric traditions like the Knights Templar. Then you have the Shriners. They are incredibly well known for their philanthropy, particularly their amazing children's hospitals. And there's also the Order of the Eastern Star, which is super unique because it actually includes both Master Masons and their eligible female relatives, focusing on charity and moral teachings. But remember, going back to what we said earlier, no matter how many of these appendant bodies a member joins, absolutely none of them sit above or outrank the foundational Blue Lodge. They are just extensions of that same exact building.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for the day. How does a global brotherhood with absolutely no global leader survive for centuries? Well, it survives precisely because of the blueprint we just walked through. It relies on a rock-solid local foundation in the Blue Lodge, a completely decentralized governing roof of sovereign Grand Lodges, and a network of recognition agreements that bind them all together through shared values, things like brotherly love, truth, and personal growth. It is a brilliant, incredibly delicate balance of total local autonomy and deep global unity. What you should really take away from this explainer is that Freemasonry just isn't some secret world government. It's a network of independent lodges deeply dedicated to helping individuals improve themselves. It's an absolute organizational achievement. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I really hope this architectural tour has left you with a much, much clearer picture of the craft.